Hello, and welcome to Pep Talks with Jeanne. I'm your host, Jeanne Pepper. I started doing Pep Talks as a way to inspire you to do intentional acts of kindness and to further the goals of #BlazeItForward. Over the past 6 years, Pep Talks evolved. I now use it for interviewing people actively making a difference in this world through their volunteerism, community service, or careers. My guests are all here because they have dedicated their lives to making this world a better place. Join us as we delve into the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of these truly inspiring and hardworking people. Hi, welcome to Pep Talks. This is Jeanne Pepper, your host, and I have my guest today, Justin Arenson. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
So Justin is the youngest guest I've ever had on my show, 24 years old, an entrepreneur. He grew up in Orange County with my children, went to school with my son and my daughter a little bit, probably for a couple of years. We did a lot of fun things with Justin and his family when he was young. Our kids went camping with you all over the Southwest and Central California. I remember there was a Yosemite trip.
Yes.
Yeah, that was almost my last camping trip of life. But we had a lot of fun with your family, and they remain great friends of ours. In fact, your mother is Wendy Arenson, who was also a guest on our show, who is the executive director of the Jewish Community Foundation of Orange County. The reason that I wanted to have Justin here today, which I've explained to him, and I'm going to let him talk about his life and all of that in a minute. But one of the biggest reasons I wanted Justin here is because Justin is the kid that parents all want to see their kids start, to get going. And Justin's young, but he's already started his own company, which is a really great company, a very useful company. It will be a very beneficial company for all people. It will make this world a better place. And for that, we are grateful that Justin's doing something good with his life, getting started with something, and we hope that he has much success with it. And let's let Justin tell us a little bit more. So tell us where you went to school, what you studied, and how this started.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. Appreciate the kind words. And this is a beautiful, beautiful studio too.
Thank you.
So I went to, I got spoiled. I went to college in Sonoma, up in wine country. So that was a lot of fun. Half of the business majors there end up in the wine industry in some way or another. So I started college in 2018, coming out of TVT, where I went to high school. Sonoma was, I didn't actually even open my acceptance letter to Sonoma when I was first figuring out where I wanted to go to school. Not interested. I was debating between a few different UCs and a couple other schools. And I ended up, in the last couple weeks of the deadline before needing to submit an application, I toured Sonoma up with my dad. And I realized that it's a very small school. Nobody's ever really heard of it unless you're kind of near the area. But there's a lot of opportunity. Being at a smaller school, I was able to... It accepted a lot of my APs, so I was able to do essentially a double major in business and economics. I did a minor in computer science. I joined the rowing team. I was the captain and the treasurer. I was in a lot of student leadership positions. I was in something called Village Council, where we had a budget, and then we ran events for all the upperclassmen. So we were in charge of that, and I chaired like a committee that helped to organize those things. I also was what you called like a school senator. So I worked with the dean of the business school, and then they called it like an advisory board of students, and we helped to figure out how you can make the school better. So we would get data from students on what their experience has been like. We ran some really big surveys. We worked with our student government. And at the end of the semester, we delivered a pretty comprehensive report to the dean and helped to pretty tactically show how we can make the school better and the reasons why. I also ended up becoming they called it the vice president of finance for associated students. That's student government at the school. So I was able to, very privileged to spend a lot of time with the cabinet of the university CFO, collaborate very closely on financially how could we benefit the students of Sonoma State. Associated Students operates as a separate entity from the university, but the mission is to benefit the students of Sonoma State. So we have our own budget of revenue from student fees coming in, and then our job was to allocate that in the best way to support students. So that was an amazing experience too, and I feel that going to a smaller school like that was it worked out pretty nicely. If I went to a larger one, I'm not sure if I would have been able to get involved in quite as many things. But just having that amount of experience outside of the classroom too was it really helped develop myself, I think. So.
That's really interesting. I was just thinking about it, how coincidental it is that the only other person we've had on our show who was under the age of 30 also went to Sonoma State.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, Bailey Kaufman, who also has helped us with PeppTalks. That is really interesting to me because knowing you as a child, you were kind of quiet.
Yeah.
Maybe I would say introverted, but I don't know if you would agree with me. I think as a parent, there were some kids that kind of stuck out as loud and some that stuck out as quiet. And you and my son were quiet. Mm-hmm. And Jay is still quite quiet. I don't know. What do you think? Have you changed?
I think it was a pretty weird kid. I think that's fair to say. Yeah, I mean, I think college really helped me grow. TVT was amazing academically. I had a good group of friends, but I also felt very comfortable there. I didn't really feel like I was necessarily, I don't know about challenged, but in an environment where there was a lot of like new variables. And so going to college where everything is new, especially out of school where I really didn't know anybody. I had one friend from TVT that went with me. I think it really helped me. It was one of those reset buttons where you're able to figure out who you want to be.
Yeah. So it was good that you were at this school that was small and kind of gave you space.
Yeah. And, I think that you can also, just for anybody, you can get that at a lot of colleges, also larger schools. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is your personality. I think part of it is also having an idea of where you want to end up, if it's possible, and then trying to match that with the opportunities at your school.
Right. That is good advice for people looking at schools now, especially since it is so difficult to get into any four-year university.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, going on that point, there's I think some sort of a conception that going to a smaller or a less prestigious university is like not as good. And I very much was in that bucket too. Like coming out of TVT, I wanted to go to the highest caliber university that I could get into. But I do see it as a bit of a trade-off where at the larger schools or the more prestigious schools, you do have all the amazing things that come with it. You have an amazing network. When you graduate, you get pipelined oftentimes into a lot of really great jobs. But it does come at the trade-off of it being very rigorous a lot of the time academically. And so I think that if you're somebody who fits into that model well, then that's great. I think if you're somebody who wants to like personally experiment a little bit more and have some of your own experience where you develop outside of the classroom a little more, going to a smaller school has a lot of opportunity.
Absolutely. Let's get into how you developed the idea for your business. Did that happen while you were in college?
It did. Yeah, there's a little bit of a funny story about starting it. So my freshman year, I was still a pretty, I don't know about necessarily shy, but a quieter kid. I wouldn't, like go up on a stage and speak. That gave me some anxiety. But I saw there was a pitch competition taking place towards the end of the first year. And I had this really terrible idea, but I thought it was great at the time. It was something called socializing, where pretty much people would use people's Instagram pages as a promotional tool. So our pitch was kind of like, instead of running Facebook ads where you pay for the ads and get the reach of the specific people that you send a promotional thing to, with this model, people will post it on their page. So you get your target audience that you're sending the promotion to, plus their whole circle. So you get a lot more reach. So it obviously doesn't work very well. But I did a pitch, completely bombed the pitch. I stumbled my way through it. It was horrendous. But I was able to meet one of the pitch judges there was the entrepreneurship professor at the school. And he said, he saw some of the work I did behind that with like making a SWOT and stuff like that. And he said, this is great. Like, if you're not confident with this being it, totally fine. But I think you should keep looking into this. And so that gave me a little bit of inspiration.
Was this a computer science professor?
No, he was in the business school.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually ended up taking his class a few years later while I was building the company. So that was its own fun experience. I think part of the inspiration too was when I was younger, like even in, I think, end of elementary school or middle school, my dad would drive me a lot of times to school or just around places. And a lot of the time when we were in the car, we would talk about ideas. We had this, a lot of it was silly. Like we had one where it's like, if you press the brake lights harder, your tail lights should be brighter or a different color or something to signify that you're braking harder to reduce accidents. So, there's a lot of things like that. And most of them were just terrible, but I think I loved that time with him. And so I think it also kind of taught me to think about like problem solution. And that was part of my inspiration. But to answer your question, this company started completely differently, but it started as I just finished this internship with a real estate company. I was like an executive assistant for the CEO and for the president. And I got back to my dorm one day. I was updating my resume. I should probably do this. And I kind of just sat there for a moment midway through writing it. And I thought to myself, you've always told yourself that you're going to start something, you're going to build a business, you're going to be an entrepreneur. But here you are, you're trying to like apply for a new job. And so I kind of called myself out and I said, screw it, let's try something. And so I literally pulled out this piece of like paper that I had in my drawer next to me, put it on the desk, got a pen, and just started like drawing the first wireframe of what I wanted to make, which was this like roommate matching app for college students, which I feel like every college student entrepreneur has that idea. But I didn't know that at the time. I just kind of went for it. And that's really where it started. And I just kept.
Well, let's stop you for a second. Every college student has an idea to do this at one point.
Well, no, but I mean, I've just seen this kind of like roommate matching idea a lot of times. Like it wasn't anything particularly novel. I didn't hear about it when I was first creating it. I just kind of saw it after as I was invalidating what I was building as part of like improving it. But
can your product be used for that purpose too?
No. Maybe one day, but that's not our focus at the moment.
So tell us, what is the focus?
Sure. So, so our product is, it's all about find your people. So what we found is that, not Ivy Leagues, but most other institutions in the US, somewhere between 10 and 30% of college students will drop out in their first year. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of problems with that. One of the big ones is that from the university perspective, each student that goes to college, they pay tuition, they pay for housing, for food, it's tens of thousands of dollars per year per student. And so you can imagine that if you're a school that, let's say has 20,000 students, and so you literally have thousands of students leaving every year, the bill really adds up in terms of loss, 20% in your first year. And it actually continues through. By graduation, most of these institutions, only about 60% of the starting class will graduate, which is pretty crazy to me. And what we also found was that around 30% of the students that leave, the reason why is because of something called a lack of belonging. What that means is it's a few different things bucketed together, but generally what it comes down to is the idea of I don't have friends. I feel lonely. I don't feel like I have a community here. I don't feel like I belong to this institution. Mm-hmm. And, nobody wants to feel like that. And so a lot of students will leave to go to another school. There's so many of them that they think will have a better fit for them. And I kind of thought that, wow, college is, I think one of the real value propositions of college is not necessarily so much as a place of like knowledge. I think it's a little bit different if you're in STEM. where you need to get real formal training. But otherwise, you have like YouTube University and things like that. You can get internships. But I think one of the real value propositions left in college is a place of network building and of developing yourself into the type of person that can really take on the world. So it kind of blew my mind that like this was such a huge problem for the schools, that they really didn't have a handle on how to solve this. And so that's something that I wanted to help with. I can talk a little bit more about how we do that, but
I think that's
the
actually a really important, because a lot of those kids, when they leave school, they're probably very depressed, very
Yes.
unhappy. And then that leads to all kinds of other problems too. And maybe some of the people just want to transfer to another school that might have a better place for their academics. Maybe their major is better somewhere else. But there probably is a pretty high percentage of people that will leave a school because they just haven't found activities or people that keep them there.
I mean, I'll tell you, one more data point that really blows my mind on this, more from the loneliness perspective, is, and I'll throw it back to you. How many close friends would you say the average college student has at graduation? Like the most connected sort of group of people.
Maybe 5.
The average is about 2
At graduation?
at graduation. Like once you go
I can see
home.
that, because you probably angered half of your roommates and you never want to see them again, or
Yeah.
yeah, you never know. That's interesting though.
Yeah.
I would not have thought that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's, really at the forefront of most people's minds, but I think what that really means, not as just a number, is that most people, or a lot of people, have one friend, and I think it's something like 20 or 30% of people report as having no close friends, especially of young people. And I think this carries through a lot of demographics, but that's a big problem in society. It's kind of crazy to me that in cities where there's literally millions of people, how is it that we can't get the right people together to have their own community? And so it causes a lot of mental health problems, being lonely. Professionally, it holds you back. You don't have a network of people to help you.
Yeah.
And so I want to help solve that.
I love that. I really love that. And I love this idea of having the ability to connect to people so easily within a closed circuit, because we have all of these open circuit social media platforms, like Instagram and Facebook, but there's no filter. I mean, you have to create your own filters, and it can be quite overwhelming. And that's not even for just a campus. That's for the world. But I mean, a campus is a pretty big place too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think another kind of relevant variable there is that it's also very hard to like explore through social media. Like, for example, with the Jewish community here, there's no like list of the different Jewish clubs and groups and things like that where you can just like see what's happening and then get involved. If you're if it's social media, you have to know like what the accounts are, the name or the handle, to see their page. That's kind of silly to me. It's like, if I'm somebody who wants to join this community, it's very hard to. If I don't have somebody who's like already in it that can refer me in, or, you kind of just have to either just guess, or sometimes people will post on like websites and you can find it. But it's not very like natural for people, especially like even if you do find it, to then make your way into the community and like actually go to an event. For a lot of people, especially post-pandemic, who maybe aren't as like comfortable putting themselves out there and taking that first step themselves, it can be very challenging to, even if you do feel this sort of loneliness, and want to like have a deeper connection, to actually like get yourself into these communities.
So let's say I live in Laguna Woods, which is a senior community here in Orange County, and I would like to use this platform for my homeowners association that has 2,000 members in it, or 2,000 homes. Is this the type of platform that could be used by a homeowners association? Or like you said, a Jewish community, or a church community, or a school community, obviously a campus community?
Yeah, I mean, these are, there's a lot of types of communities we ultimately do want to help. Ultimately, we want to be a place that no matter where your people are, you can find them. Being a startup, focus is incredibly important. We don't have unlimited resources or time. And so for us, we try to de-risk essentially like what we're trying to do by starting off with colleges where it's like a contained environment, as you mentioned, where there's like a finite amount of people. And there's also a lot of things already ongoing. There's a lot of club events, but people aren't going to them. And so if we can solve that problem and then scope out of it long term to areas where it's a little bit more, there's more variables or it's a little bit harder, I think we'll be better able to solve more of those problems then.
That's interesting. I'm just like kind of thinking about all the possibilities now of this application. It's big. I mean, you could have one big central access point where you could look up your community. You might have more than one community.
Yeah.
Right? And it could all be branching out of your campus tree or whatever it ends up being called. So this idea started percolating when you were in college, and it percolated from actually working with the other students and trying to find out where their satisfaction points and dissatisfaction points were, because you were surveying people and you were creating activities for them, which is really kind of an interesting thing to do as a college student. I like that a lot. That was a community service you provided, right? You didn't get paid for it.
No.
And not a lot of college students give extra time to doing things outside of what they have to do to graduate.
Paid an experience.
Yeah, it's a good. I like that. That's a good idea for parents to remind their kids that there are things you can do at schools that can not only help the school, but help your kid get some really good skills, career skills and ideas. Okay, so when things went wrong, and I know that things always go wrong with every good idea, how did you deal with that? Can you think of an example?
Well, I think that one framing that's really important, especially in entrepreneurship, is that it's actually quite rare that things go right. Almost always things are going wrong. And so that's the baseline. The baseline is things are wrong. And your job is to make things more right. So, it's more of a just kind of like overall mentality, I would say, of just how you work through it. It can be really hard. You have to, I think ultimately what it comes down to is you have to fundamentally believe enough in what you're doing that it is always worth it. For me, I think there are too many people in this world that are craving connection that can't get it. And I think that's worth fighting for. And so, on the days where I'm working literally 20 hours of back to back, sometimes multiple days in a row, if you don't have a compelling reason for it, it's so easy to just stop. You're just at a computer. You can just quit.
You're your own boss?
Right. Like you can just shut down, especially as a startup. Like it's very easy to wind down. So it's always a fight to keep things in motion. But part of it too is that quitting is not an option, really. I don't see it as that. It's just not in my, I don't think about it. It's hard, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Because you will get through it. And yeah.
Did you ever have a setback that made you really question whether you were going to go forward?
Oh, all the time. I mean, like there was setbacks where I was like, this is the end. And that happened 50 times. But you just have to keep going. One example, there's a lot of them, but let me see. Okay, so one of them, I'll give you like one right out of college, like kind of along that trajectory. So so when I was in college, I spent a lot of time with the school. So that's where I learned about this retention problem from the CFO, and from a lot of other conversations, especially in AS. So I was like, well, I want to try and help solve this. And they're like, great. So I did the totally wrong way. I built the product first and then talked to them after, just based on what I knew. And then I invested a lot of my own money into it. And then I had a few conversations with the school about it. At the time, I was like a very, very optimistic person. I perceived it as impressive, as like they're interested and that it was going to go great. And we get to the end of the school year and it doesn't close. And that was a real kind of like slap in the face for me. I was like, you just put a bunch of your money into this. You put a lot of like real optimistic thinking into it, and it didn't work.
A lot of
So
people would have stopped right there and
yeah,
said, you know what, maybe I should go work for someone else.
that was 0.1% of the journey. And that was like literally just the start. And so then is what do you do from there? And that was kind of the rest of the company.
That's really interesting. What was the first big success you had in your business?
Um, there's a few. I wouldn't say that there's really like a massive success yet. I think we're like on trajectory for it, but we're not there yet. Um, Keep in mind, we've been going for about, 18 months or so, 2 years, depending on how you look at it. So for a startup, that's considered pretty new. But yeah, I mean, there's like, you have to celebrate the wins along the way. Some of which are when you find somebody else who believes in your vision and joins your team.
So an investor?
Yeah, an investor or, even an engineer that really can see what you're doing and believes in you as a person and your ability to navigate all the chaos and make it work. You have to pause and celebrate that. If you don't, then it's just always gonna kind of be in the suck. So you have to really appreciate those moments and let them know too. Let them know that what they're doing is important, and it lets you keep going on this journey.
That's really good. So at this point, are you fully funded? Are you still looking for funding?
We're actually in the middle of a funding round right now. We've had a few like types of friends and family type rounds, and right now what our round is doing is that it's so we launched just recently at UCI. This is called kind of like de-risking our go-to-market.
Well, this is a big success to get a school like UCI to use your product.
Well, so we not quite what you think. We don't go top down through the school. I spent something like 10, 15 months, somewhere around there in that range of doing cold calling like every day to schools, running a sales pipeline there was like 10 different stages. Colleges are extremely difficult to sell into. Long story short, we realized after, I spoke to literally over 1,000 colleges, that it wasn't the right approach for selling into universities. We're talking about, $30K contracts with an 18-month sales cycle and then months for implementation. So extremely difficult. It's like playing on hard mode, especially for the first time. And so what we did instead is we recognized that our strong suit was always like from the students and the clubs. They loved what we're building. We're a tool for them to help them promote their club, manage their club, and get more people to come to their events, ultimately. Which kind of going back to earlier, it's very hard to actually kind of get your word out there. There's a lot of like posters and flyers and social media, but if you don't know them, you don't know them. So this way, when you have the whole campus on here, you can promote out to everybody.
So let me get this straight. You
Yeah.
go to these clubs on campus and you say, use my product for free and I'll link all of you together. And then I can go to the university and ask them to either pay for it or I can get advertising maybe.
So yeah, that's actually really good. So so we go through clubs one by one and get them on here. We're gonna help market you out, help promote you for free. You don't have to do anything. We're gonna make it easier for you to run your club through us, through our platform, with like tools for like notifications for your students of event changes, stuff like that. And we just keep adding those organizations on. We also seed it with local events like farmers markets. We have trips going to bowling alleys and to all these different types of things. Just, anything that's going to get people to want to do things together in the real world. And you keep going one by one, very slow at first. And then eventually you hit somewhat of a like critical mass or a tipping point where you've got enough core groups, like there's enough clubs, there's enough people on the platform that people start feeling a little bit of FOMO, not being in the platform, not seeing what's going on, and then it starts to accelerate across the university. So that's what our kind of go-to-market strategy is right now that we're testing at UCI. We just launched. We're just getting our first clubs on board at the moment. Yeah, in terms of monetization, there's this. So one of which is, you're right, we can go back to the university having already had a certain amount of students on here, having proven and de-risked for them the effect on involvement we're having, and also the automations that we have for marketing and things like that, and then make a sale there to broaden that.
And they could also give you their input on what they would like to see this app do.
Absolutely.
And you could probably tweak it for each university to make it more personal for them if they pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's monetization outside of that too, but
yeah, the advertising potential. Mm-hmm. There's a lot there. I think it's brilliant. I really do. I love the idea. So you're at UCI right now, and you did all of that stuff. You went to the Greek system. You went to the engineering department. You went to all these different places. You got all these clubs and groups together. You get them on your platform, and then you went to UCI and said, let's make some synergy here. Is that what happened, or has it happened?
Well, we're just at the beginning of that process. The going to UCI would happen, later down the road once we've hit enough of their user base using it.
No, that's really interesting. Yeah. So this is the first market that you're in. Mm-hmm. And have you done anything besides UCI? Have you helped? Have you helped any other organizations that needed help that maybe reached out to you? Yeah.
So we, I haven't done as much of this as I have wanted to, but after October 7th, with Hamas's attack on Israel, I wanted to. There was a lot of this fragmentation that I noticed within the Jewish community in Orange County, with just it being hard to get people together, whether it was just going to get drinks, or whatever it was, and so we wanted to help try and pull our community together, to unify people a little bit, to not feel as alone while all of this chaos is going on, and so we made a separate version of our platform to help with that. It's been live not nearly as much as I have wanted it to. We've been doing a lot of iteration and a lot of focus with the colleges and with the business. But yeah, that's been it's rewarding to be able to help pull a community that's close to home for me together.
Yeah, and it's also good because you grew up here. So you, even with UCI, you know where all the bowling alleys are. You know where all the fun things are for people your age. So you're really a great resource for the app and for the people that you're going to be working with at these universities, because you can do that in this market. But I'm sure as you expand, you'll probably have people with your expertise in each marketplace.
Yes.
When you're maybe $1 billion business,
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that next year. But I love that you used it for not just for your own benefit, but you use it to help other people too. That's a really great thing, Justin. Not everybody would think to do that, but it has great practical applications.
Thank you.
So I like that a lot. I think that's great. We talked a little bit about this before we went on air, but I was asking Justin about spirituality, and not unlike probably most people now, you tend towards more of a agnostic, maybe not so much religious, but more of your religious life is more of a cultural experience, I would say, from the way that you described it to me. I would have to say that I've struggled with this my whole life, the purpose of religion in my life. And maybe you'll find that it is more meaningful to you later. You never know. But in terms of being a religious person and being a good person, what's the difference?
Being a religious person, being a good person? I think there's many ways to be a good person. I think, this is a huge generality. But I think that in religion in general, it does have teachings that will point you towards being a good person. And I think that's great. But I think being a good person is more of an action. Than anything else, at least for me personally.
So it's not who you are, it's what you do.
Yeah, but I think it doesn't need to be taken super seriously. Like, small actions are important. Saying thank yous, making people smile. Just doing nice things on it. Like, one way I like to visualize this is for myself, which is a little bit of a nerdy way, but if you think about like, I'm gonna do this thing, and if you think on like a scale of like, is this a good thing or a bad thing or a neutral thing? Is it neutral and up, or is it below that? Just do the things that are neutral and up. And that's like a pretty distilled way to think about it. But yeah, like, I think that it's harder to get to what's like a better person, because that's different depending on the context you're in, right? Some people it's very much within your family and your community, and for some people it's about like really big societal scale impact. But I don't think those are necessarily better. It's just different.
Mm-hmm. So your influence or blueprint for being a good person came from your family, maybe?
That was a big part of it. So my mom, Wendy Arenson, she for the foundation, she's we've always had a lot of people at our house, a lot of the community involved with us, and us with the community, and she's really put a lot of her life towards helping the Jewish community here and beyond, and I admire that. And my dad too. He's a big part of all this, and so yeah. I mean, they raised me. I think I had good parents.
They're great parents.
They're great parents.
Yeah, that's an objective opinion.
Yes. So I'm very lucky about that. Yeah.
Well said. I agree with you. I think that we all take our inspiration for being good from different places, and it might come. You have a fabulous family that was a great role models for you, and I don't think it matters necessarily that you have those great role models. My parents never were involved in clubs or community. They were very insular. They were very introverted people, and I have to respect that, even though I'm an extrovert. So that's something that you learn as you get older, that maybe the reason that you don't get along well with some people is because you might not be as introverted or extroverted as another person, and that took a lot of years for me to realize. It was the reason why I couldn't see eye to eye with my parents when I was growing up, because for a lot of reasons, but that was a big piece of it. And even now, because even though we're much older, these still are influence our behavior. Mm-hmm. So you have to find the influences in your life that you respect and admire, in my opinion, whether it's your parents or your community leaders or your political leaders or your teachers or whoever it may be. And, identify the ones that are doing good, that are making this world better, and look at the reasons why and how. How do they do it? What are they doing? And just like, it's not just about community service. It's about choosing a career that helps people. You've chosen to be an entrepreneur, which we don't typically think about as something that is helpful to other people. Being an entrepreneur helps the entrepreneur and their family usually. But when you use your entrepreneurship to actually be a game changer and to make this world better, and there are quite a few companies out there that have made the world better, but I think there's that balance, because you give, but you're also taking. So you don't want to take too much as an entrepreneur from this world. We can look at like companies that pollute, even though they create wonderful things for us. So there's got to be that balance. Do you see a balance that you have to try to strive for in your work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think part of it is purpose, and I think part of it is like, what is your company actually doing? There's like positive sum and zero sum games. Positive sum being that you're creating something new and taking a slice of the new thing. And so you're not taking away necessarily. You're contributing a lot and taking some of that reward. That's the type of company we strive for. I think in terms of purpose, I didn't necessarily aspire to be an entrepreneur. It was, for me, more of growing up, it was more of, I didn't really actually know exactly what I wanted to do as a career, even in my first year of college. And I knew I wanted to like, help the world and help advance humanity further, help our society, to just be more technically advanced and brace people up, along those lines. And at first I thought, about like engineering and maybe physics. I got something clicked with math with me a little bit in my freshman year. I'm still obviously not great. But yeah, at first I thought about doing it as like an individual contributor. But I realized pretty quickly I wasn't going to be, a top 1% physicist or a top 1% engineer. I wasn't going to be at that level. And so what I came to an understanding of was that I could instead be I could be like an amplifier. I can be I can help to enable other people to do these things better. And so that's for our company, our purpose is really about helping with this loneliness problem, not just to help people personally and professionally, but also a little bit more deeply at a purpose of just helping our society itself try and grow into being a more connected place and a place that can help can help advance us further, essentially.
Yeah, I like that. I think we need to have a lot more people in the next generation that are focused on making things better. I don't think that we understood the importance of that in my generation. The focus was more Gordon Gekko and Wall Street. It was less about how we impact the world. I think that the people that understood that were the big philanthropists, like the Gates family. They wanted to make big impacts in this world with their philanthropy. And I'm coming at it from I'm just an ant in the world of philanthropy, but even an ant can move a rock. That's 10 times its body weight, right? So, you can be small, but you can still contribute. You can still do something.
It's the sum of everybody.
That's right. So that's why it's not useless. And even the small things that we do matter. They matter to someone.
If nobody does the small things, that's a huge loss.
Yeah. And it's great that that at such a young age that you understand that. I don't think a lot of people really give it much thought when they're just trying to survive. And a lot of people in their 20s are just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So, but as when you realize that survival is only part of living, you can't just live to work. You have to live for more than that. But if you are going to live to work, then what are you going to do with all your money? Because, you can only buy so many things. So you have to figure out what you want to do with it and how or you're just going to, at least for me, I don't think it'd be very satisfying to live on top of a pile of gold. I don't know.
Agreed.
Yeah. So did you ever have any challenges or traumas in your life that changed you or that made you who you are today?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the bigger ones I would say, when I was in, this is a little bit more deep, but in middle school, I got this variant of polio. They think it was called Guillain-Barré, and a pretty rare condition. But essentially, it was a neuromuscular disorder, and for many months, I pretty much couldn't move, couldn't go to school. And it was really challenging, and hospitalized me twice. And it was also hard, I think, for my family. I bet. So, I mean, I had a lot of time to think in that period. I just kind of would watch TV at home like all day.
Trapped in your own head.
Yeah. I wasn't doing much.
And I remember this because I was at your bar mitzvah, and I remember that I think they brought you in on a chair and you didn't get out of it. And we were just happy you were having a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
And I think it had to be delayed even. That was when you were when you were getting better. You still weren't 100%, but that was hard. I'm actually very familiar with this disease. I don't know if you're aware of this.
No.
My mother contracted this from the shingles vaccine, Shingrix.
Really?
Yes. So for those of you who don't know this, I think 3 in 1 million people will get Guillain-Barré syndrome as a side effect of the Shingrix vaccine. My mother was one of the first people that came down with it. They didn't even understand that. But within 3 days of her being hospitalized and put on a ventilator, they issued a warning about it. So people were starting to complain, but it didn't hit the tipping point until 3 days after my mother ended up in the hospital with it.
Wow.
Yeah, which is weird.
That's hard.
It's weird. And, like you had it and no one even knew what it was. I'd never heard of it. I'd never known of anybody that had it. But the more that I got into it with my mother, the more people came out and said, oh, I had that. And they were young people. A lot of people get it when they're young, which is weird. And they usually make a full recovery. My mother's at 95%. I don't know about you.
Wow.
Are you at 100%?
No, I haven't had any, at least that I know of.
Yeah. I mean, you seem 100% to me, but like my mother, it's a little bit noticeable, like kind of in her hands, because what this disease does is it cripples you. It's almost like having a stroke. You can't, and it actually, your own immune system destroys the insulation on your nervous system. So your nervous system cannot work. And you end up, if it's very severe, you end up on a ventilator like my mom. But she got really lucky, and they were able to do a plasma, some kind of a thing where they remove all of those antibodies from your body. And they have to filter your blood to get them all out, because those antibodies are what's killing you. And when they're all out, your body starts to heal. And then you just pray they don't come back again. So yeah, in your case, you were young and strong. So eventually it stopped and your nervous system went back to normal. And that's what happens with most people with Guillain-Barré.
Good to know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and who knows if that's even what you had? I don't think they ever really knew for sure, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really, looking back, I don't really think about it very often. I think it kind of helps. I don't really remember much anyways about the time period.
It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing, but that is a significant challenge to overcome as a young person. But you don't remember it so much because it was so unpleasant. But I think that's also part of the recovery, is that we learn to not focus on the things in our lives, especially when we're young, that are traumatizing. We learn to just kind of compartmentalize them and, draw from them what we can, if there is anything that we can take from it. But in this case, luckily, this was not something that had to have any lasting effect on you or your life. It was just a challenge you overcame.
Yeah. I think it did teach me a lot about fragility, young. So I don't know if it's, I don't really think about that too much, but maybe subconsciously that had somewhat of an impact of wanting to try and make the most of things.
Yeah. It's like almost like an existentialist moment as a young person when you don't really know if your life is in the balance or not. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, what do I do?
Yeah, I remember learning to walk again.
Yeah, maybe I'll learn how to walk. That would be nice. Yeah. Ooh, gosh, I know. I had to go through that with my mom. She had to learn how to sit up. She had to learn how to sit on a toilet. Everything. Yeah, that was not an easy thing. So, I feel for you, and anyone who has to deal with something like that, any debilitating disease like that. Thank you for sharing that. That's not an easy thing to talk about, things like that.
Yeah, it doesn't weigh on me really too heavily anymore. It used to, especially when I was younger. But now it's kind of a thing that happened. And for me, it's really more of just like what's going on now. I can't change the past. It's just what's happening now.
Why do these things happen?
That's life.
It is life. Bad things happen to good people sometimes.
Yeah, life is not inherently fair.
It is not. You're right about that. And it's unfortunate that we have to learn that, because we come into this world totally aligned and with complete fairness and love. When we enter, everything's fair. Well, it should be, unless you're, I don't know, born into a cave alone. That would be very unfair. But yeah, we come here so aligned, and then we start to see that there is unfairness in this world. Do we try to correct it? Or do we just try to make things better?
Fair is kind of fair is a hard term. It depends really on like what you're talking about. I think there's a lot of badness in this world. Fair, I think it depends a lot on like the scope you're looking at. Are you looking at like on a global scale about the world? You're looking at like within a family or a person. I think there's a lot in this world that needs to be improved drastically. We're just, really existentially as a planet, we're what's considered like not even a type 1 civilization. We're very early,
we're type 2 diabetes. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet.
Yeah, like we can't control our own planet's weather. There's a lot that we can do, and I really, I want to see, in 1,000 years or whatever, I'd love to see humanity as, not necessarily just on Earth, with Earth as a place that is thriving, but also not kind of with all of our eggs in one basket. And, it might take a lot longer than that, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot to get to there. We're right at the beginning.
Well, that's really insightful, Justin. I agree with you. I think we have to be able to go explore the universe. This can't be the final place for humankind.
And that's the only way to understand all of this a little bit better.
But then I think the primitive people will have to stay here. Deciding who those people are is going to be hard. We're going to start to wrap things up here. I've kept you probably far too long from all of the great work that you need to be doing right now. But it has been really fun having you here. And if I could ask you one more question, it would be, is there life outside of Earth?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, do you know Fermi paradox? Have you heard of that? Sorry, the Fermi paradox.
I don't think I have.
It's kind of like the idea of there's literally trillions of stars in the galaxy, and the universe as a whole. And for each one, there's suns, and for each one, there's multiple planets. And so, if you say, if 0.1% of all the planets in the world had conditions similar to Earth, or 0.0001, you still would have millions of them. And so, the idea of 0 other planets having the same conditions of Earth, I think, is a little preposterous. It also could have happened 1 billion years ago. The universe has existed for over 13 billion years. And it could also happen in 1 billion years from now. So and there also could be life that is very much unlike ours, that we don't know how to detect. But I think it's naive to think that we're the only consciousness to exist. But I think it's also very important to recognize we're the only consciousness that we know of. And some consciousness could be very far ahead of us, and some could be very far behind us. And so I think it's in our best interest to continue advancing.
Yeah, very good point. So keep advancing. Stop de-evolving.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's been another episode of Pep Talks with Jeanne. And once again, I would like to thank our guest, Justin Arenson.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an amazing experience. So it's always a pleasure chatting. I'd love to follow your page, and thank you. This was great. If you want to see more about what's happening in Orange County, whether you're looking to do things with your friends in college, or looking for more events happening around our community in general, join our waitlist at campustree.live/waitlist, and we'll add you in to get you plugged into our community.
#Blaze It Forward is a campaign my family started to repair the world with kindness in honor of our son, Blaze Bernstein, who was murdered in 2018. You can learn more about Blaze and how you can make a difference on our website, www.blazebernstein.org, or on my new website, www.peptalkswithjeanne.com. And we also have our Facebook group, #BlazeItForward. Special thank you to all of the volunteers who have helped me with my philanthropic endeavors. And today, that is a thank you to my producer, Eli Moskowitz. Thank you so much. And a special shout out to my son, Jay Bernstein, for the incredible music that you hear in the original theme song at the beginning and the end of each episode. Thank you for being here with me today. And that is another episode of Pep Talks with Jeanne.